Hello and welcome to the Romance Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z Martin, and tonight we are going to be talking about paranormal romance just in time for spooky season. But before we get started, let's have our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Nancy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Northcott. I write paranormal romance, and I write historical fantasy with some romance in it, and romantic suspense. And with my colleague Jeannie Adams, I write science fiction mystery adventure.
Very nice. Nicole.
Hi, I'm Nicole Conway. I write teen and middle grade fantasy, teen and new adult paranormal romance, and paranormal dark fantasy type romance. And I love anything with dragons in it.
And apparently the spirits are listening because Nancy almost got bopped on the head by a falling book. So this must mean something. KJ.
Hi, I'm Kaje Harper. I write gay romance in a whole range of genres, from historical to contemporary, mystery, paranormal, fantasy, sci-fi. I also write some young adult LGBTQ short stories and novellas. And that's about what I am about.
Nice. Hank?
Hi, I am Hank Edwards, and I write gay romance in a variety of genres as well. I lean more towards paranormal. I like to combine genres, so I have some paranormal humor, and I have some rom-com, and I've written a young adult urban fantasy series under a different pen name, the pen name R.G. Thomas.
Okay. Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna Kensing, and I write queer romance, mostly paranormal and historical, because I too like to mash up the genres, but a little bit of contemporary as well. And I too like anything with dragons, so yeah.
Dragons are always cool. Janet.
Hi, I'm Janet Walden-West, and I write paranormal romance, urban fantasy romance, and just to be different, contemporary romance.
And I'm Gail Z Martin and Morgan Brice. As Gail, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, near future, post-apocalyptic, and more. But as Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance with lots of things that go bump in the night. Now, how did you decide that you wanted to write paranormal romance, things with ghosts or creatures or dragons? What drew you to that incarnation of romance? Nicole?
Well, sadly, there aren't any dragons in my paranormal dark fantasy romance. I know, I tried really hard to try to find, I like to try to like sneak one in somehow, and I couldn't, there just wasn't a good opening for it. But I guess I was shamelessly inspired by Supernatural, because I mean, yeah. Kudos to people who can watch it without fantasizing. But I loved that, but I wanted to do a more like modern, twisted, dark fairy tale turn on it rather than strictly ghosts, demons. They dabble in some of that in some episodes, and those were the ones I found that I enjoyed a lot. And I have a background studying mythology, so I wanted to sort of do my own spin on this dark, twisted, modern fairy hunter gunslinger thing. So that was the direction I took.
Nice. Kate?
I've read fantasy, various kinds, for a long time. I was a big fan of Anne McCaffrey and dragons. Also Andre Norton, and a lot of the classic fantasy writers as a kid. And it naturally, was part of what I was writing. I think my current fantasy and urban fantasy that I'm writing, part of the motivation there was reading things where questions came up for my werewolves, for example, this whole idea of having hidden species that humans don't know about, and the question of, what would it really take for humans not to know for generations that these paranormals were out there. I mean, how do you stay that hidden, resulting in a society where secrecy is really strongly enforced with very ruthless rules as kind of the only way to keep a secret from with 3 people, as if 2 of them are dead. And, you know, so trying to solve some of those problems in what felt like a realistic angle towards the paranormal.
Okay. Anna?
So yes, I grew up reading fantasy and romance and, you know, have most of the television that I watch is sort of in the paranormal realm, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Supernatural. And I read quite a lot of fanfic, Buffy, Angel, and then, you know, a lot in Supernatural, and kind of dabbled in writing some Supernatural fanfic, which just, as I feared, was a door that I opened and then, you know, fell through in a way that I couldn't really stop myself. So, and then I started reading, you know, published paranormal romance, and then I started writing the series, which was kind of started as like Sam and Dean Winchester as like Pirates on the High Seas, and turned into, there were these shifting half human, half octopus creatures, and then there were tentacles, and who doesn't love tentacles in their romance?
That's right. That's right. Tentacles make everything better. Hank?
I grew up a long time ago watching a lot of like old school monster movies on TV, and, you know, back in the good old days, and started reading in high school, started reading Stephen King, and really loved, you know, that paranormal ghost story stuff, and always read, you know, fantasy, and always was drawn to the spooky stuff. So of course, as I became older and started writing, I'd want to write that. So, and then I kind of wanted to bring in, you know, I want to see myself reflected there. So started adding gay romance into the mix. So it's been a lot of fun.
Okay. Nancy?
Well, I grew up reading fantasy, science fiction, comic books, and romance. And the first fiction I ever wrote was Legion of Superheroes fan fiction. And for those who are not familiar with it, the Legion is set roughly 1,000 years ahead of our time, and they're all from different worlds, and they all have different amazing powers. And I wanted to write superheroes with romance. It's very hard if you're aiming for a traditional publishing contract to sell superheroes. It's been done, but it's really hard. And to me, mages or wizards are the superheroes of fantasy. So I wrote mages, and I wanted to do something a little bit different, use a setting that people hadn't used before. And when I was a child, we visited the Okefenokee Swamp in southern Georgia. And our brainstorming group was kicking that around, and somebody said, you know, the energy is different in a swamp. And it just clicked, and I thought, I want to go with that. I'm going to do magic, natural energy, and it's different in the swamp. We visited there when I was in 2nd grade. And all I really remember about it is that my mother refused to let us take a boat trip because she was afraid a snake would fall in the boat. So
legit concern.
yeah. I don't think, as far as I know, that's never happened. And I tried when we're down there not to think about, you know, alligators can actually come a ways out of the water using those tails. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of a fun setting to play around with. And I love using the magic in different kinds of ways and basing it off natural energy. And in the back of my head, they're all wearing a cape. They don't in the book, but in the back of my head, they're all wearing a cape, kind of like Superman's or Batman's.
Yeah, you're right about the alligators. I was on a swamp tour in Louisiana, and they were holding the bait way up, and those things can fly. Seriously, like 3 feet straight up. Enough for me. Janet?
I am another of your Supernatural and Buffy led romance writers. I've always loved shows like that. And used to, I just read, you know, straight up fantasy, urban fantasy, sci-fi. I came to romance pretty late, actually, just a few years ago, when I realized that my favorite part of most shows and most books was the romance. So why not just write straight up romance?
And like many other people here, I got my start back in high school writing fan fiction, which is what taught me that I could amuse people and entertain them with my stories. And I'm a huge supernatural fan. That's actually what got me into romance, because I started reading the fanfic during a hiatus. Then I kind of took a turn and started reading the slash and said, this is really good stuff. I wonder what the stuff that's published that isn't fandom related looks like. So then I read several hundred of those and said, this is entirely too much fun. I got to start doing this. And Morgan Brice was born. So I'd always had some romance in my fantasy, but it was, about 95% action, 5% relationships, and nothing on page. And so the Morgan Brice, it's about 50-50 action, adventure, romance, and sexy times are definitely on page. So it's kind of a different thing. But yes, thank you, fanfic, for opening all kinds of doors. Now, what about the research that you do for the paranormal piece of what you write? How do you research the spooky stuff? Kaje?
Well, the spooky stuff is pretty much out of my head. So I don't know that there's a lot of research involved in that, other than trying to make sure that it fits into, like I said, because my style is a realistic paranormal. I want to make sure that the world around the paranormal is as real as it can be. So a lot of research on, the setting that I put my characters into. A little bit, because I have werewolves of, kind of research into canine physiology and senses and those sorts of things. But the paranormal pieces really, I think, are the least researched of everything that I put in there.
Okay. Anna?
Well, since I do paranormal historical, I do actually quite a lot of historical research. And I'm often very inspired by places that I visit. And so I was on a writer retreat in Port Townsend, Washington. And it's this like little town that was actually a fairly significant seaport in the late 1800s, and has been pretty well preserved with the Victorian buildings and tales of the colorful characters and smugglers and things like that. And so I ended up setting my series in there. And, I sort of name drop some historical figures, and I do a fair bit of the historical research. And then I did quite a lot of research about octopuses and physiology and what they do and how smart they are and how sort of amazing they are. And it just sort of kind of, went from there. I do know, and just because I do a fair bit of research, and because I'm sort of kind of naturally compliant, I am aware that octopuses have 8 arms and 0 tentacles, but it's just not quite as sexy to talk about arm romance and instead of tentacle romance. So, I have a new series that I'm working on that is probably going to be set in a coastal village in Maine that I've been spending a lot of time in a granite quarry. So there will be, I think, dragons there that also probably will have tentacles. So. But like Kaje, the paranormal stuff, the sort of, weirdness probably does come out of my weird head.
How about you, Janet?
I'll say up front that I'm lazy. That's why I don't write anything historical. That's entirely too much work to be accurate. So I just have always enjoyed mythology and folk tales and religion. So I just pull stuff out of my head that makes sense to me to create it. The only thing that I really do a lot of research on is the setting, because for me, setting is another character in your story. So I want to get it right. And again, it's usually places that I've been to too, and you get that feel for the place. So basically right now I'm bugging the snot out of all of my friends that live in Arizona in the Southwest for information on my new series.
Okay, Hank?
I have a trilogy called Venom Valley that has vampires and zombies in the American Old West with gay cowboys and Native American spirits. And it's kind of all in witchcraft. It kind of is just all this. And I came up with this idea when I was watching True Blood. And, you know, I was like, yeah, you know, vampires, you know, silver can hurt them, but what else can? And I came up with the idea that maybe like a zombie bite could break through their skin because dead on dead. So that kind of like started that whole thing. And I did a little research on, I wanted the classic vampires, right? So I kind of went back and read Dracula and, you know, I reread Stephen King's Salem's Lot because I really love that creepy, foreboding, building terror feel of it and tried to emulate that. And for like my recent series Critter Catchers, where these two guys have an animal control business and become accidental monster hunters for each book, I just sort of researched each monster as I introduced a new monster in each book, but I wanted to keep it kind of like the classic, like the werewolf bite, you know, and that kind of stuff. And some of it, you know, I made up on as I went, like, you know, if you get bit on a full moon, you will turn right away kind of thing, rather than having to wait a whole month. So it's like, what am I gonna have him do for a month? So so yeah, it's been kind of fun.
Cool. Nicole?
So I've had some educational background in mythology. I've taken an insane amount of classics classes, and so I have a passion for Greek and Roman mythology. But from that, I kind of my interests expanded beyond that, and I really like researching theologies and stuff. So for Mad Magic, what I did was just sort of, I looked for parallels. I looked for you know, monsters, deities, spirits. I nitpicked like little bits and pieces from various cultures where I could find that there were parallels, and I sort of drew all of that into the central idea of fairies exist, and depending on where they are, they've impacted human culture and have been interpreted in these different ways. But you're dealing with the same sort of entity. It's just in this place they were treated as deities, in this place they were treated as bad spirits, here they were, you know, so it's different. And then they have these centralized figures who are the more notorious members of the court, who have gained so much influence and power that they have reappeared throughout history under different names. And my favorite, I always bring him up, but my favorite is the boogeyman, or the bogeyman, who has been Dracula, he has been Hades, he has been Baron Samedi, he has been, and so throughout history, you're seeing all of these names are like reflections of him, but who he is Erebos. He's a Barghest that has this very inflated ego. He loves drama. He loves to present himself as this grand, but he's really kind of a dork. But he was a lot of fun to play with. And I finally, like, book 3 comes out around Halloween, and I finally get to unveil him in all of his just flamboyant glory, and I cannot wait for it.
That sounds like fun. Nancy?
Well, I used a lot of books on Wicca to form the magic system for the mages. And I adapted it because I didn't want to just wholesale lift what they do. I wanted it to be my own, but based on something that people might recognize. The mages fight ghouls and demons. And I really did not do much research on those at all, because I started looking into demons, and there were all these Judeo-Christian texts about it. And I thought, you know, I just don't want to tread that ground. I'm just going to make up my own. And the ghouls are kind of like energy vampires. They can't breed among themselves, so they kidnap mages and humans. They can only eat fresh kill, and with their talons, they can suck out life energy. So the mages and humans are potential breeders, but they are also potential snacks if supplies run low. And then what Janet was saying about setting really resonated with me, because I didn't do a lot with the Okefenokee in the first book, because I wasn't sure if it was going to sell. So I didn't want to spend all the time and money to do that. And also, it's in South Georgia and I live in Central North Carolina. So getting down there was not really convenient. So I did most of my research from the internet. And while that's fine, it's easy to miss the website that has a crucial thing on it. But then after the book sold, we went down to the Okefenokee as a family. And anybody who knows me will tell you I am not nature woman. I like my surroundings climate controlled and my wildlife safely distant. But the Okefenokee Swamp, which is not really a swamp, it's a blackwater peat bog, and the water is like an obsidian mirror when it's not disturbed. I thought, I can work with this when I saw it, that I can use it actively in the stories instead of just having it be a backdrop, which is, I think we would all agree, if you've got a background you can use, that's even better, you know? And so that's really it in a nutshell. I read a little bit about candle magic and a little bit about fire magic and about the magic of gemstones and kind of mixed them all in for the mages. The ghouls and the demons are simpler. They're just different types of malevolent energy, and the demons are from the veil beyond worlds, and they're the veil between worlds, excuse me, and they're trying to get over here. And that's what the arc of the series is about, is the mages trying to stop the demons and their allies, the ghouls, from taking things over. And it's been a lot of fun.
Okay. Yeah, I look into a lot of magic systems. I've done a lot looking into the properties of gemstones and plants and flowers, depending on what story I'm using. I've got grimoires on my Kindle. And I love looking into things like voodoo and hoodoo and different traditions like that, because there are characters in my books who practice those traditions. And so I want to get it right. And I've always found that the research is where you get a lot of the ideas for the book, because I'll usually start with a vague idea of what needs to happen, but what monsters are we going to run into this time? What cursed and haunted objects are they going to have to tackle this time? And or what abandoned places? And so in the process of looking those up, that's where I stumble on things that are better than anything I could have just pulled out of thin air and go, oh yeah, like you said, I can work with this. This is so cool. I just joined a Facebook group that's all about finds people have gotten at like yard sales and estate sales and garage sales. And within the first 5 minutes of looking through it, it's like, that's gotta be cursed. No, that's haunted. Oh, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. I had like a whole list for the next book. So that's how I do mine. What about your tropes? What are your favorite tropes, Hank?
I have a couple of them. Friends to lovers is always really fun. And the enemies to lovers or the rivals to lovers is a really good one. And one of my favorites is also like the forced proximity, right? So like, you know, there's only one bed at the inn. Oh no. So yeah.
Okay. Janet.
All of mine seem to end up enemies to lovers, or at least opposites attract. There's so much tension just inherent in that, especially if it's like, oh, here we have a human and here we have a monster that would like to snack on humans.
Nice. Nancy?
I tend to use, not just in the paranormal romance, but in general, I tend to like the second chance at love. In fact, I like it so much that I have to be very careful when I've plotted a book to go, okay, when was the last time you did this? You can't do this all the time. So I have that. I have rivals to lovers, and I have opposites attract. Friends to lovers, I like to read it. I don't write it very much. So it's kind of odd, but those are the ones I like the best.
Okay. Anna?
I too like forced proximity and second chance. I'm a huge fan of forbidden love and sort of all kinds of things. My formative years were spent reading, like literally formative years were spent reading Flowers in the Attic. So I like forbidden romances and, you know, Buffy and Angel, The Slayer and the Vampire, and, you know, just, so that's a huge one for me. I like found families. I like age gap. I definitely like opposites attract as well. I do too read a lot of enemies to lovers and friends to lovers, but I think I don't write it so much. I think although a lot of the stuff that I write is definitely second chance, like prior relationship resuming and getting it right this time around.
Okay. Kate?
I do write a little bit of friends to lovers. I think the tropes that probably dominate in mine are kind of hurt comfort and us against the world. I have a tendency to write my guys having less conflict between them and more with them against a broader environment, whether that's my werewolves against kind of the packs that want to get at them, or the humans that may imperil them. But even though I love to read enemies to lovers and things like that, where the conflict is very much trying to bring these two guys who are knocking heads together into a romantic relationship, my guys tend to fight outward much more than inward.
Okay. Nicole?
Well, I always sort of gravitate toward, I love rivals, and I really like bad boys. I like doing forbidden love, and I like doing first love stories. I like doing the like trust proven relationships where, this person finally decides to open up, and that, you can either prove your trust or you can betray. And I love to keep audiences guessing with that, of whether or not they made the right choice until the end, because then the tension's really high, and they have a lot of emotional investment in it. And I'm not really, I don't really do triangles, but I do like to have like the uninterested third member kind of floating in the background, because then people are like, well, that person's so much better. And it's like, then that usually spawns their ideas, their fan fictions of it or something. And that's really fun to watch them play with that. So, and I love a good dark broody prince.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to put one of those in Mad Magic too, and he ended up being the fan favorite. He was the Prince of Nightmares, and he loved coffee, and he was the son of the bogeyman. He was his unruly heir, so it was fun. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I love hurt comfort. I that's one of my all-time favorite tropes. I also like friends to lovers and second chance at love. Done a little bit of age gap, but hurt comfort I just come back to time and again. It's give me a good rescue, give me somebody bleeding, maybe hurt, broken leg, something, got to get out of the mine before it explodes. That sort of thing is just my jam. So I really love that. But again, like everybody said, you got to mix it up. So I try to put my hurt comfort with something different. And I'm not huge on internal conflict, like other folks have said, between the two characters. I like them. If they're going to get split apart, it's because a bad guy has grabbed them or something has happened to somebody. It's not that they, are having a tiff over something that could be resolved with a sentence. That sort of makes my skin crawl. That makes me very mad when that happens. So I try not to do it to my readers, but everybody's mileage may vary. Now, what tropes or monsters have you thought about using but haven't yet? Janet?
Probably the dragons. I feel so bad saying this now because everyone else has dragons and I don't. But they are fascinating, especially some of the series that have come out recently, but I don't know what it is. They have never shown up in any of my writing.
Okay. Anna?
I think the Fae, I've thought about it, but I haven't really, and I've sort of done, some like reading into, sort of Fae stories, and I have like some very, very early preliminary vague thoughts, but I really have not I haven't gone down that road yet, but dragons are my next sort of door that I'm going into.
Kate?
Redeeming the bad guy, maybe. I have a trilogy of what's a paranormal mystery series, and there's a secondary character in there, the older brother, who is a really bad guy in many ways, but at the same time, has some redeeming characteristics in that he was really protective of his family and his younger brother and so on. And he's a character that I've wanted to do a book for, and do that kind of character redemption arc, but just have never gotten around to it, and I'm not sure I will. I dropped the ball on that series, and the third book came out a lot after the first two, and so the audience kind of wandered away. So I'm not sure that I have the interest in that story to bring it out, but he's always kind of nagging me in the back of my mind, wanting his book.
Nicole?
Well, I've said before, I've never done vampires and werewolves or anything like that. And then like after we did that, I started thinking about it, and now I have an outline. So that's what happened. So I guess we're doing that. I have never done, ironically, I've never done the enemies to lovers thing, but I like that. So I kind of want to try it. And so that was kind of the angle I've been taking. I've also never done anything with merfolk, but they've always kind of intrigued me because there's so many differing accounts. Like some see them as the dead, you can do the siren route or you can do the Little Mermaid route. Like there's, and so there's a lot of wiggle room there to do something sort of fun and unique. And so I don't know, that means maybe something in the future I need to dip my toes into.
Nancy?
I would agree with the Fae folk. I mean, I don't have to agree with other people's choices, but that's a choice for me too, because if I did the Fae folk, I would need a second magic system in the book, and creating a magic system is a lot of work, and keeping up with the one I've got is enough work for me. I've also never written retrieving the bad guy, like Kaje mentioned, redeeming the bad guy, but that's the next book in the Light Mages series when I get to it, because I just thought, why is this guy turning against his own kind? And they all think he's a bad guy, but I know he's not, because I know things they don't know. So that, and then vampires and shifters, so many people do that so well, and I just don't feel like I have anything to bring to that table. The book that almost beamed me is set during the Napoleonic Wars. And for years I said I'd never write a Regency because I don't have anything to bring to it. And then I got an idea of what to bring to it. So I'm sorry it beamed me, or I would almost beam me, or I'd show it to you all, but now it's on the floor and it's just going to have to stay there until we get done. So I think I'd sort of find what is my comfortable wheelhouse and I stay there.
Okay, Hank?
I've never taken on like angels and demons. I've never had what I consider to be a very original idea about it. So I never really wanted to try and go into that and just kind of replay storylines that I've already seen or read somewhere else. So it's always kind of been in the back of my mind, but I never knew what to do with that kind of setup. And again, I haven't done, just like others, I haven't done the redeeming the bad guy, kind of like that redemption arc. My characters always kind of start out goofy and ridiculous and sort of get brave as they go along. So, and have to fight the bad guy. So, yeah.
Okay. Now I got so engrossed in listening to everybody's answers that I forgot who I started with. Janet, did I start this round with you?
I think you did.
Okay. Boy, I have cycled through an awful lot of monsters. Not so much as viewpoint characters, but in one form or another. So I don't know. I love writing shifters. I have a couple of vampire characters. I have a lot of fun with ghosts. Lately I'm doing a lot with ghosts, which would seem to be an odd character choice maybe, but they're so versatile. And so I'm having a lot of fun with ghosts. As far as tropes that I haven't done quite as much with rivals to lovers or age gap that's a significant age gap, but you never know. It just has to be the right story that shows up and you go, oh, well, that's what it is. So what's your writing process like? Anna?
Well, I have a day job, so I don't write as much or as long or as frequently as I would like to. but I normally, when things are sort of moving smoothly and I'm not completely overwhelmed with the rest of my life, I write in the morning. I have a, virtual Zoom office kind of space where I log into and write with a group of people that changes and varies, but there's usually like a core group of people that I've gotten to know over the last year or so. And so I like that very much. And I write fairly slowly, which is sort of not good for my output. But I tend to do, I spend a lot of time sort of in the first like 2/3 or so, and then, kind of like cycling back and sort of going over and over and over and trying to figure out sort of, how to set up something. Like I don't know what to set up at the beginning until I reach the middle, until I reach the end. And then I reach sort of those points and I'm like, oh crap, I got to go back and read the whole beginning again. And so usually the last like quarter or so goes pretty fast because I finally spent all of my like thinking and cycling and meandering time. So yeah, and then I send it off to my editor and beta readers, and then there's a point at which I'm like, I'm done. I can't look at this anymore. It's either terrible or it's awesome, but whatever it is, it's done.
Good enough. Hey.
I also have a day job, so I do not write as often or as much as I would like to. And life has just been very busy lately. So I try to write in the morning before I log into work, and I usually can get some good words down. I am an organized pantser, I guess, is my, I kind of have an idea.
I like that.
Yeah, I kind of have an idea, like a broad idea of where I'm going. And then all of a sudden, as I'm writing, like a new character will show up and suddenly change the course of everything. And I'm like, who the hell are you? And why did you just come in and ruin my story? And so it's been kind of fun. But yeah, and I do write slowly just because there's not a lot of time to devote to it. And I wish I could put out more books a year. I'm happy if I can get 4 books done, but usually it's about 3. So yeah.
Okay. Nancy?
I am a plotter. I didn't used to be, but now I am, because I joined a brainstorming group and they were all plotters and they converted me. And for me, the plot chart is a roadmap. If I get a great idea, like Hank was saying, a great idea for a character or a development pops up, I'll go with it, but then I have to look at how it ripples through to everything else that's been planned. And I don't write every day, because sometimes, even though I need to get from this point to this point, and I know what happens in between, how it happens and what people say to each other and how they feel about it, sometimes that takes some percolating. And if I take a day or two to let that percolate, I can put a whole lot of words on the page when I get back to it, instead of sitting in front of the computer and hemming and hawing and wondering if it's time to go play Space Invaders. It's much more productive for me to do it that way. But, I have friends who write every day and it works for them. It just doesn't always work for me. And so then when I get the rough draft done, I do one revision on it. I send it out to a couple of critique partners. Then I work on it some more. And then I either send it to my editor, or if I'm publishing it myself, I do one last pass and send it to copy edits, because I think somebody who is not me needs to read it before it goes, be the last reader before it goes into the world. And so that's basically it.
Okay. Jana?
My life in general is organized chaos, so is my writing. I can write almost anywhere, and I have written large chunks of stories sitting in parent pickup lines or in waiting rooms, anything like that. And I'm one of those people that is a converted pantser. So my outlines tend to be like 20, 30 pages maybe. But it's also funny because mostly it's the emotional beats that make it into the outline. I always seem to start with characters and then I have to find a plot to stick them into. So that is what takes me the longest too when I'm plotting. It's like y'all said, I have to sit and think about it for a little while to get where it's going. And the worst part of my writing is this right here behind me. I write almost everything out in longhand. I, for some reason, unless I'm doing like a really short story, staring at that cursor on the page just freezes. Everything freezes for me. So everything ends up written longhand. And then my second pass is when I, put it into a Word document.
Okay, Nicole.
My writing process is a literal dumpster fire. It because my plots and my stories tend to be very character driven. And so I start out with what I'm told. I write scenes, like scene bullets, rather than like a true outline. I'll like this scene, and this happens, and then I'll end up with this nice, awesome, like makes sense couple of pages of scenes. And then by chapter 2, we have just gone completely off the rails. Everything's on fire. Everyone's dead. Like it never works out the way that I think it's going to. And it's like what Hank said, where this character who was supposed to be like a side character or just a random NPC is like all of a sudden a main character now. And I'm like, who are you? Okay, great. Now we have this new guy who's literally happening in the book that I'm trying to work on right now. And it's really thrown me on this last, I'm writing the last of my Dragon Rider it's the last of the first set of the Dragon Rider Heritage. And this character who was supposed to be like this criminal lord who was supposed to be like in one scene is now randomly showing up again. And like, this is going to be a thing, I guess, where he just keeps coming back in every book now. And so, I my intentions start out great. And then by chapter 2, everything's on fire. And it's like, how did I even write the outline? So I try, but I'm just, I guess, the characters take over and I have no control.
Age?
I don't even try. So I'm a total pantser. I start with 1, maybe 2 voices in my head and an opening scene, and I sit down and I write from there, and I have no clue sometimes even what genre I'm writing until the vampires show up or whoever it turns out to be. My latest series, which is my Necromancer series, was supposed to be one piece of flash fiction for my Facebook group, because I do that every week. And I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I haven't done anything this week. Let me write something. And it was too long. So I was like, okay, well, you guys, it's going to be a serial. You'll get a couple other installments. I'm now on book 5. And with no real expectations for what was going on or where it was going. To me, that's what keeps me writing, because I've written a long time. I started writing when I was 14. And the vast majority of my books in the first 30 years never got finished, because I would try to outline and I'd try to polish, and somewhere I'd lose interest in the story, because I was, by the time I'd gone through that process, I knew what was going to happen. And so I didn't care about writing it. So I found that the only way for me to get through to the end of a story is to really not know where I'm going, because then the excitement of finding out what's happening is what drives that story forward. And if I stop and try to edit or revise, I lose the forward momentum. So I really have to start from scratch, find out what's going on. By 3/4 of the way through the book, I figure out who the murderer actually was, and tumble through into the ending, and then I can edit and get beta readers and whatever and do some polishing up and so on. But for me, that organic, completely no clue process is what makes it fun.
It's always fascinating to hear how other people's minds work, because if I went into a story without knowing what was going on, the anxiety of not knowing what was going on would freeze me. So I am a plotter who gets epiphanies. I need to have an outline so that I can kind of pace myself and know how to chunk the story and make sure I've got the scenes coming in the right order. And since I try to write a lot, it keeps me from not going down, dead ends and having to lose a lot of stuff, but there are frequently epiphanies that I didn't expect. A character will show up, a scene will turn out differently than I thought. Something that looked really good in the outline only takes like 2 pages instead of 10. So crap, what are we going to do now? And that's how that's where a lot of the fun of the surprises comes in for me. So it's just fun to hear how everybody else works, because whatever you're doing that works for you, that works for you, which is great. Well, believe it or not, we have blown through our time. So it's time for everybody to please go around again and tell everybody where we can find you online. And if you have a book that is recently out now, coming soon, let us know about it. Nancy?
Okay, now I suddenly can't talk. Let's try that again. All right, my website is nancynorthcott.com. I spend far more time than is good for me on Twitter, where I'm at Nancy Northcott. My latest release is the book that almost beamed me. The Steel Rose is historical fantasy with romance set in the 100 days between Napoleon's escape from Elba and the Battle of Waterloo. And that was out from Falstaff Books this spring. And in the coming year, I will be reissuing my paranormal romances. The only one currently available is the one behind me, Sentinel, which is set in Macon, Georgia. It's the only one that's not set down around the Okefenokee. So that's basically what I've got. And this has been great. It's been wonderful to meet everybody.
Okay, Nicole. You're muted.
Sorry, my kid's home, so I never know when I'm going to get a snack request. You can find me at authornicoleconway.com. I'm also kind of covertly on Twitter, but I only really follow D&D stuff. So you can find me amongst those nerds if you wish. But I'm very active on Facebook and Instagram. And the third and final Mad Magic book, these are the first two, come out November 2nd in audiobook, paperback, and ebook. And that's like my next big release. So if you liked my fairy ideas, maybe you'll like it.
There you go.
Prince guy's in there, so.
Kate?
You can find me, my website is kageharper.com. I'm not on Twitter or Instagram, but I am on Facebook, and I'm there a fair bit. And if you come by Kage's Conversation Corner, which is my group, I do flash fiction every Sunday. We do book reviews and finding some deals and things for people. My most recent release, I was re-releasing my werewolves, and I have a new book. This one here is Undeniable Bonds, book 6. And then to my surprise, one of my characters would not shut up. This was supposed to be the last book in the series, but I now have a book called Unplanned Coda, which is coming out October 23rd, which is a novella that really will finish this series, I think.
Hank?
I am at my website. It's hankedwardsbooks.com. You can find me. I have an Amazon author page also. I'm not on Twitter very much at all. I'm trying Instagram, but I always forget that I can post stuff there. I'm like, oh, why do I want to post pictures of my dinner? Nobody wants to see that. So, and then I'm mostly on Facebook, and I have a reader author group. It's called Hank's Hangout, my Facebook group. And my most recent release was back in the summer. It's called Star Spangled Showdown. It's a contemporary romance, kind of a rom-com, and it's set in my Williamsville Inn series. And I'm working on some new paranormal stuff that'll be out later this year, but I'm going to keep it a little secret for now.
Anna?
My website is annakensing.com. I do have a Twitter account, and I used to be a little bit more active on it, but I have not been on Twitter in, I can't even remember how long. I am too, like Hank, I'm trying to be more active on Instagram, and I sort of do it in kind of spurts. I'll like post, and then I'll like forget about it, and then I'll post again. And so that's Anna Kensing. I have a Facebook page, but I don't have a Facebook author group because I can either write or I could be on Facebook. I can't do both. My most recent release is a book.
Oh no.
Anna, are you with us? I think she froze.
She froze right at the most recent release.
I know.
Cliffhanger.
Tell us.
We'll come back to Anna for the rest of that. Janet.
I am easy to find. It's Janet Walden-West, websites, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I am mostly on Twitter or Instagram just because I like shiny, pretty things. And I have a series out this year, Region 2 series, and book 2 drops Thursday. So,
All right. And
Happy book.
I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com and morganbrice.com. All the social media are a variation of those names. So I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I've got a YouTube channel. Got a couple of new releases out. Blink is the new release in the Morgan Brice world, and that's the second book in the Treasure Trail series. So that is set in Cape May, New Jersey, and it's got everything from angry witch ghosts in a haunted theater to 2 warring mob factions in the here and now, and a heroic food truck. And then in Legacy, it's the 5th book in the Deadly Curiosity series. And we've got gay pirate romance lovers who save the world from a sea elemental, and love wins. And that one is set in Charleston, South Carolina. Massive overlap between the Deadly Curiosity series and all my Morgan Brice stuff. But it's really about cursed and haunted objects and magic and curses. So lots of good stuff there. And Anna, we lost you just at the important part where you were going to tell us what you have out that's new.
So my most recent book is book 2 of my Octopian Shifter series, which is my, sort of tentacle romance, octopus shifter, Ursula the Sea Witch's origin story, but gay. So that is the most recent book. And I also have a Bella serial out now that's sort of in progress that is actually contemporary romance, between a small town mechanic who specializes in classic car restoration and the big city lawyer who, had a crush on him back when they were young. So yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you very, very much. You've all been wonderful panelists, and this has been a lot of fun. So thank you so much for being here. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more romance coming up in Continual, so we'll see you online.